This is Martin Gargson, Communication Studies Professor at Colorado State University and the Director of the CSU Center for Public Liberation. This is going to be a short video to talk about the importance of values and be able to talk about values and how that relates to a lot of the issues that we're struggling with, to have the tough conversations we need to have for democracy to work and for us to address our shared problems more effectively, right? Um, so kind of key points to start with. This is to set up an exercise you can do in your classroom that I'll put a link on in the comments. First is to the definition. Values are generally subjective opinions about what's good or bad or favorable or unfavorable. Values instead of facts which have some connection to reality, they're objective. We can't all have our own facts about certain things. Values are more tied to opinions. Values are what I think is important or unimportant or good or bad in a sense. So we don't want government, we don't want any kind of authority to dictate our values. We want to live in a pluralistic society that lots of people have different values and kind of pursue and support their own values, right? Values from kind of an argumentation, academic perspective are implied, not explicit. But what that means is people don't tend to say, I care about safety, therefore, right? Privacy is important to me, so I believe this or I want this, right? They tend to be these implied kind of inherent logic to that underline our arguments. So a big part of understanding each other is to bring out those underlining values, to listen to someone when they have a strong opinion and figure out, okay, why is this important to them? What are the values or the interest that really kind of connect that, right? So really, anytime people are just identifying a problem or pushing for a goal or arguing that we should do something, values are inherent to those. A problem by definition is a value is missing or being disrespected. Something's not there. Something is not right. Right. A goal or a hope is, hey, I want change into the future, primarily because that future better supports values that I care about. And anytime I say, hey, we should do X, there's an implied we should do X because it leads to Y, and I believe Y is a good thing, so we should do that, right? So again, values are inherent in so many of our conversations, even though they aren't kind of an explicit part of that conversation. A big part of my work and other videos can kind of get into this, but the kind of quick version, most social issues can be seen as wicked problems. And what that means is it's a problem that in particular involves multiple underlining values that just don't fit together. So the reason why these problems are so tough is because there's inherent tensions between these values. Different people prioritize and rank those values differently. So how do we figure out kind of how to find the right balance or prioritize or hopefully kind of transcend some of these tensions. So some really quick examples from other presentations. Here's healthcare is a wicked problem because we want those three things, but those don't fit together very well. And so how do we kind of find the right way to kind of negotiate this? There's a process in downtown Fort Collins that we initially did a survey. What do people want out of downtown Fort Collins? Here's what 12, 13 different things that people really cared about in those answers. The challenge is, these don't fit together so well. Some do, others don't. How do we negotiate that in a public? A process I did for the city, for the university on parking, when we asked people, what would you want out of the parking thing? What would you change? Again, multiple underlining values kind of coming out and natural tensions between these. Did a process for Platte River Power Authority. And even in their mission statement on the bottom left, you kind of see that they want to kind of honor these three values. And the reality is those don't fit together very well, right? So a lot of this movement to decarbonation is trying to find the right balance between those. Using technology is constantly kind of helping us do that better. Sustainability itself can be seen as a wicked problem because we want these three things. We want a strong environment. We want a strong economy. We want to treat people well. But those don't always fit together very well. So the more we talk about the triple bottom line, the more we talk about working together to find the proper balance and prioritization between those, rather than how our brains prefer it, taking one thing at a time, as we'll get into in a second. Lastly, part of the exercise you'll do will be playing with kind of some broader values, your personal values. America itself, these are 5 big American values. Individually, they're all generally kind of pretty positive. But there's natural tensions here, and so many of the issues that we're dealing with inherently involve these tensions. Right? So this gets at the fourth kind of key starting point. Values, when kept abstract, when we talk about these kind of terms, they're generally universally supported. It's when we actually start specifying what do we mean, what policies or actions am I justifying by that value, or when we're forced to make choices between values, that conflict comes up. So one way to think about this is, in many ways, we all have the same values. What makes us different is how we rank those values, how we prioritize those values. So that's the conversation we need to have. The conversation we tend to have, because of social psychology and brain science, and political incentives to frame things in kind of good versus evil, us versus them, red versus blue kind of ways. We like to think our side's got good values and the opposing side has bad values. And that's what really kind of gets us into trouble, right? So because of all these reasons, learning how to talk about values with nuance is critical. We have to kind of figure that out. People sometimes talk about, no, you can't talk about values. That's just kind of a personal thing. That's problematic, will lead to conflict. If all the issues we inherently deal with together have underlining values that are an essential part of it, we have to talk about values. We have to learn how to deal with these tensions and how to find better ways to negotiate them, right? So how can we improve how we talk about values? First, and this is kind of one of the most well-known books in conflict management, from Getting to Yes from Harvard. Shift from focusing on people's positions, what they want, the actions they're focusing on, to why they want them. What are the underlining kind of interests or values that are inherent to that? So the more that we can kind of ask people when they have a strong opinion, don't make assumptions about their values. Ask them, why is that important to you? And once you get all the underlining values out, there's always a lot more kind of room to negotiate there, right? Most people assume they have strong positive values supporting their beliefs, right? People believe they are reasonable. People have positions because they believe those are the right ones. You got to start with that, right? But then psychologically, we assume that people we disagree with, particularly our opponents, particularly in a polarized environment, we love to define them by what they're against rather than what they're for. So I'm for value X and they are anti X. And that makes you feel very secure in your position, and that you're right and they're wrong. The problem is those assumptions exaggerate our differences, undermine the connection and common ground that we need to work together, and it fuels exaggerated conflict. So understanding their values pragmatically, if you even if ultimately you just want to change their mind, you have to understand their values from their perspective to figure out a way of understanding them and shifting their view. Right? So lastly, values are so often used to divide us. They're weaponized, particularly in an adversarial kind of system that our political system that we have. But once understood with more nuance, once you shift from the assumption of problems are caused by wicked people with bad values, and put the wickedness in the problem, and recognize that all problems inherently have these tough tensions that we have to figure out how to kind of negotiate and make some tough choices. That helps us really counteract the polarization and make space for better conversations to spark the trust and creativity that we need to deal with our shared problems more productively. Thank you.